Welcome back to Pop Goes the Stack, where AI-powered means good luck debugging, and the logs have decided their performance art. I'm Lori MacVittie, and we're here to make the chaos explain itself, because it's too hard to explain it for us. It's really crazy. So this week, we have, of course, our co-host, Joel Moses. Glad you're here. Lori. Cross fingers. Nothing else goes. We've had some problems getting Joel connected, so we're just hoping. Yeah, we're going to blame it on AI. And Buu Lam is here today. Boo.
Hello, Lori. I'm glad I did not wear my Little Pony shirt today. We would have clashed.
No, they would. Oh.
You know who probably has one is Chase. I'm going to throw that out there right now. So.
All right. Okay, I know who to ask then and to prep so that we dress alike. So this could be fun, but today it's time to talk about AI epic fails or epic AI fails, depending on, what version of grammar you'd like to use. Because nothing says cutting edge innovation quite like Google confidently hallucinating entirely new NASA histories or creepy little neck snitch gadgets that are marketed as your friend when really they're just surveilling you and nobody asked for it. So this episode, we want to talk through different kinds of AI fails. There's many of them. We could spend 3 episodes talking about them, but let's just pick some of the favorites that give us some lesson that we can take away from it and apply to life in general. So I don't know, Joel, you're always good at this. Why don't you kick us off? Pick one and let's just run with it.
Well, let's see. I'm sure we're going to link the article that all of us read. That is kind of a dog's breakfast of AI failures, and that's a good one. Of course, there have been plenty of other AI failures outside of that, but they tend for me to fit into a couple of generic classes. One is the solution in search of a problem. Like, okay, we can do this, so let's just go ahead and do it. We won't think about whether it has value. We won't think about anything else. We're just going to try it. And things that aren't really, intended to, or you don't understand how they deliver value, they typically fail. That's not a surprise. The other thing is that, a lot of times people forget that a statistical prediction engine is not an authority, not a doctor. It's an advisor. It's just a thing that might help you orient your thoughts, but you still have to be the one who decides whether those thoughts are correct and whether you should apply them or not. So to have an AI, suggest that you should switch out the salt in your diet for something utterly poisonous, well, maybe ask a doctor or a nutritionist, maybe someone who actually has some specialized knowledge and is not just a generalized engine. But the one that I kind of like to think about is the Humane AI initiative, which was to try to create a pin that you could ask questions of. And that the pin also had a little camera in it so you could look down at it. I don't know what your face would look like looking down at that pin, but somehow it would understand, what you were wanting to do. And of course, the pin had some, shall we say flaws. Not being able to respond in time or taking 5 minutes to connect and initiate. And here's the funny part. The pin needed a phone to work, right?
Oh, I remember
but you could also do exactly the same stuff you were asking the Humane AI pin to do on your phone. And nobody thought that was a problem. And so I fit that in that first category, which is, it's a solution in search of a problem. It's technical brilliance, even though I absolutely adore technical brilliance, is not equivalent to creating value. It's just technical brilliance for brilliance sake. And that doesn't connect to anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think, Boo? Would you buy it? You need a little pin or a friend that hangs around your neck and listens to your conversations and everyone else's too?
I think that's what my dog's for. And my dog doesn't judge me most of the time. Sometimes it gives me a funny look. And I don't know if it's based on it actually knowing a little bit of English. But I've got one of those already here.
All right. Yeah, I got one too. He's sleeping now. But yes, he also listens to everything. It's kind of creepy.
I think I do. I do have an example. And this is, follow me here, a bit of a stretch, but I was inspired by what I just read about the Taco Bell and their voice drive-through handing out or trying to order 18,000 cups of water. And so I got my mind on remembering that if you guys have seen the documentary around the McDonald's McDonald's milkshake thing, right? So McDonald's has this proprietary milkshake device, and to repair it, it is highly locked down. So there's no manuals or anything. You have to call some company that is the only company in the entire world that knows how to do this milkshake machine. But through AI, they were able to reverse engineer it and open source a manual on how to fix it and how to read the error codes on it. And lo and behold, the project gets shut down because that is not aligned to the value in that case. And so even though AI produced some sort of value and some sort of outcome, that was not aligned to the ultimate outcome. I'm not saying, I don't have a tinfoil hat on right now, but I think that is a little bit suspicious to me.
That's true.
Yes. That's definitely an interesting.
Yeah.
They can fail while not failing, right? I mean, that's, I think, the interesting part. That comes back to hallucinations and bias and whatnot. But really, I mean, AI can be working perfectly fine and still completely fail. As Joel said, like, keep the salt in your diet, okay? Just
of course.
A human jumped in the loop on that one.
Yeah. It's all about, it's interesting. In the field of engineering, we often optimize for correctness and performance. Like, we want it to work reliably and we want it to work correctly. And I think that right now in AI engineering, there is a tendency to optimize for usefulness, which is a different thing than correctness. A search engine doesn't have to be perfectly correct to be useful. A legal opinion has to be correct to be useful. An insurance denial has to be correct to be useful. And a medical recommendation does as well, right? So I think that part of this is the fact that we are, number one, as humans, we're trying to trust something that isn't an authority. And number two, the people who are developing it are not thinking about correctness, they're thinking about utility. And that's different. They don't align with each other.
Well, you mentioned the case of legal review, and so when Gen AI first becoming broadly available, they're saying, "Oh, this is going to replace lawyers," but now as you read, it's actually created the need for more lawyers because you still need humans in the loop, and it has accelerated cases to the point where there's a pileup of cases because now you can get through that initial examination a little bit quicker and then need to involve more lawyers to be able to see it the whole way through. I just think that's kind of interesting where it's given the reverse effect of what they thought would happen.
Right. But we've also seen, speaking of AI fails, cases where using AI instead and getting rid of the human in the loop results in very bad outcomes, like a 16x denial rate for insurance claims. Caused all sorts of craziness because the AI is just like, no, just left and right, where, when it's that much higher. So completely removing the humans from the loop, not a good idea either, but, there's got to be some happy medium in there.
I'll pose this question. What if you put AI in charge of DNS?
Can we not?
Would it be good or bad?
Well, that's a good question. So one of the stories linked to on that article was the story about the Air Canada chatbot, where the Air Canada chatbot just out of thin air created a bereavement refund policy, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I would be afraid that if you turned over DNS to the AI, that you would have out of thin air creations about which sites route to what. The airline, it's interesting to note that the airline at the time argued that the chatbot doesn't represent the company, but let's be real, it does represent the company. It's an incredible lesson for an enterprise to learn that AI output, speaking with authority and not as an advisor, is indistinguishable to people from an employee that speaks on behalf of the company. And that's something you got to think about when you're ensuring, again, correctness and not just simple utility, usefulness.
Right, right. And sometimes it's too much trust. Sometimes it's wrong tool for the, wrong job.
Right.
It's a mismatch. But I think in terms of epic AI fails to keep that trend going, I think 2026 is going to be the year of what database did AI delete today? Because there have been so many of them. Like you look at the headlines, okay, who got it today? There's Cursor, what was Replit? What was another one? Replit AI.
Yeah.
That's a remote code. But there have been multiple ones in the headlines where it just kind of goes off the rails and it RFs and you're done.
Yeah. One of the examples that was given in the article was about exam proctoring, and that one. So I'm thinking now about my two things about is it suited for purpose, or is it a good idea with no value whatsoever, and then trusting in something as an authority over an advisor. The exam proctor one is a little bit different. It's both simultaneously. Students were flagged for doing strange behaviors like looking away or blinking too much or changing their
Breathing.
posture or being in poor lighting. And the funny part is the model wasn't actually detecting cheating. It was detecting deviations from its training. That's all. And if your fraud detector has never seen an unusual customer and can't tell the difference, congratulations, you've just invented customer harassment.
Well, so think of, your eye movement. What if somebody had an eye operation and they were wearing a patch, or their glasses were slightly lower? They were looking down, it was coming down the bridge of their nose, and so it's covering their eyeballs.
Yeah, here's the simple truth. Humans are edge cases. We're almost always edge cases. And so if you're keying things based on a limited training set, those fraud detection, those exam proctoring systems are looking at a limited set and they think that they have a baseline, but they really don't. And that, again, there are real risks to that. And again, it's because the people who put together that system, first of all, they're trying to apply the technology to something that actually, just put an exam proctor in the room.
Well, but it goes both ways.
Second, they're trusting it as an authority and not an advisor, and that's again, it's an amalgam of both.
Yeah, and I like that, but this kind of fits in there too. Did AI write this? Right. Oh well, it will tell you yes or no. Sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong. It seems to be 50-50 here. You're never really sure. But on the reverse side, now you've got people who are absolutely certain that AI wrote it if there's an EM dash in it. Like this was just created by AI.
I
or
write
something.
with EM dashes all the time. I'm sorry.
Oh Lord!
Look, you know which style book I like. So
yes,
come on.
Yes.
So
yes.
Joel trained AI. I get it now.
Right. Yes, it was trained exclusively on Joel's content over the years, so that explains everything now.
Prolific. Wow.
It's it really is. I mean, that's right. That's happening back and forth, right? And that kind of plays to your, don't treat it like an authority. Well, but it speaks with such authority. Well, they trained it to speak with authority. So you've got, how much of this is train the AIs in a certain way, and how much of it is train people to not do these kinds of things, right? I mean,
I think for the case of, okay, you're trying to replace a human doing chat support for Air Canada in that case. But I can guarantee you, I've worked in a call center in the early part of my career. You are hired off the street and you're given basically a call flow tree to go through. And then if something strays outside of there and you can't figure it out yourself, you call for escalation at that point. You're not supposed to try to just randomly figure out something in the case of tech support that could delete a database. You're encouraged to, hey, here's more resources to bring another human into the loop at that point.
Yeah. And again, those scripts, are optimizing for correctness, not
Mm-hmm.
for usefulness,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the AI doesn't think about, oh, I should be correct when I say something. And so if I need to escalate to someone else who knows more than I do, then I will. Instead, it really wants to bend over backwards to help you. And in doing so, will make things up like bereavement policies and refunds for those out of thin air. So,
But
lot
I
to learn
think
from.
but I think people are learning because I'm starting to see more chatbots that allow me to type anything I want. But there are right, it's very canned, right? It will only do on topic. If you try to stray off, it'll be like, that doesn't count. I won't answer that. So they're starting to build that in. Yeah, right. It's like, you can't, or you can only pick, right, certain questions, right? I've seen, so basically a glorified FAQ, but it looks like a chatbot. So I guess I don't know, we're supposed to think it's AI, even though it's not. But they are pulling back from the just, here's a chatbot, talk to it, and getting more prescriptive so that they can get to that correctness, I think. So.
Well, I think there's two things in play is that if you're leaving every single response or every single prompt to be open-ended, then think of the token spend of just saying, hey, here's a something and just go figure it out. That's going to could incur a whole lot depending on what you would allow it. Hey, do you want it to actually start writing scripts and actually be able to execute something that goes and retrieves an editor and looks at different bereavement policies and compiles it together and gives that back to the person? Or do you actually put in very prescriptive scenarios in there saying, okay, this person asked for something way outside of the FAQ. Let's not go beyond that and just respond and say, maybe you should call in to someone else. But we're seeing everybody got hooked on Claude Code subscription. Cool, I have these session limits and I can just do whatever I want within here. And then that's been a bit more of a cookie to get people on board. And then I think we already saw last month with Microsoft Copilot saying, oh, we're going to start doing usage-based on you now. And you're actually going to see how many tokens this all costs. And this might change how you think about all the stuff you're vibe coding.
It's funny when people offer all-you-can-eat subscriptions to things that have actual fixed costs behind them, and then find out later on, hey, that maybe wasn't such a great idea. This is going to have to happen, and you know what? Perhaps the concern over token spend is the thing that will get people to not optimize for usefulness, but optimize for correctness. Maybe that's exactly what needs to happen. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I think that will also help with things like making, hey, this friend that talks to an AI, right? That's going to cost a lot. Are people really willing to pay that much for it? Right? It may pull back on some of those crazy ideas that people are having about how everything needs to be AI enabled, which is good, and that should be true in the enterprise too. Not every application, not every process. Not everything needs to use or be augmented by or be replaced by AI. And I think that's kind of one of the lessons from all of these fails is like, maybe you shouldn't have in the first place, right? Just because we can doesn't mean we should. So what other lessons would you have people take away from all these fails as they're going about their busy enterprise days?
Well, the takeaway that I have is, first of all, these things are remaining true. We've got 2 years plus of experience with some of these AI technologies being deployed in mass, and they remain as vulnerable and possibly off the rails as ever. They're getting better. Don't get me wrong, but when people fail to connect, hey, we can do this with we should do this because it has value, you're going to have errors. You're going to have things that go off the rails. When people optimize for the wrong thing and assume that AI is an authority and not just a simple advisor, it's going to go off the rails. And so, we can control one, we can't really control the other. But we've got to do better by and large with how we behave around AI.
Absolutely. Boo, what advice would you leave our listeners with?
I think we are, if folks haven't already, need to examine their permissions models for how they interact with their enterprise resources. And so I think we're at a point where people are experimenting with agents, and agents are something that you give agency to do a thing. And right now, I think in people's heads, they might think, oh, the agent is doing it. Well, the agent's doing it on your behalf. So you have passed on your agency to the agent to execute on the thing. And that is something that people have to accept and start to say, okay, oh, now I have to think about what my agent is doing as me, as opposed to this other nebulous thing that it just goes off and there's GPUs and something happens and I get my bereavement policy back. Once that keys in, I think people might start thinking about what they're doing a little bit differently.
I like that. You got kind of two sides here, right? Like Joel is like, right, think about the value, right? It's got to add value to make it worth it, and right, be careful with that. And that's the, with great power comes great responsibility, right? I mean, that's you doing it, somebody doing it for you. So I think those are both good sides because they're both true, right? We have to get better about picking the right place to insert and inject AI, and we have to get better about keeping it where it needs to be and not letting it go off the rails. So, well, that is a wrap for this week's Pop Goes the Stack. Please subscribe before the next vendor promises observability with zero instrumentation and maximum confidence.